Our call to worship this morning is a responsive reading. Please follow along in your order of service. Those of you on this side are the north, and those of you on this side are the south. To all who are yearning for community, to all who are just getting something to teach. For the ones who are just beginning to suspect they might nurture others' becoming. To the old and the young, the innocent and the jaded, the fresh of mind and the deeply steeped, there is room here for each and every one.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Rob Zimmerman, a member of your Board of Trustees. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to Unitarian Universalist Church West on this chilly but bright January morning in Brookfield, Wisconsin. We offer gratitude for the privilege of living and gathering on traditional territory inhabited at various times by the native peoples of the Seven Council Fires: Ho-Chunk, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Menominee, Peoria, and Miami nations. So much of the history of this land has been erased or ignored. Well into the 1800s, this land and its resources were stewarded by people who were eventually coerced or forced to move elsewhere. By the late 1800s, when my great-grandparents immigrated from northern Europe to east central Wisconsin, most of those native peoples were displaced. Those of us who are settlers or their descendants have a duty to learn that history and engage in the work of reconciliation and reparation. As an anti-racist faith community, we also acknowledge that racism throughout our society continues to lead to the violent deaths and oppression of Jews, Black, and Indigenous peoples and other people of color. As a welcoming congregation to gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, and queer plus peoples, we continue to address ongoing homophobia, violence, and unfair legislation targeting them. May we engage in the struggle to dismantle white supremacy culture and all forms of oppression in our hearts, in our community, and in our world. It's so good to be together as a loving and evolving community gathering in and among so many different spaces. We especially note that a substantial part of our gathered community is joining us from their homes or other places. Wherever we are physically, our hearts and spirits are one. If you're a newcomer here, I hope you picked up a flyer on the way in that tells you all about what to expect and how to connect. We'd love to have you fill out the welcome side of the yellow paper you received when you entered, and hope to see you at the newcomers table in the foyer after the service. If you're online and want more information, please email us at visitor@uucw.org. There's a time for coffee, tea, and conversation for everyone following the service. Find a comfortable place to hang out, here in the sanctuary, in the community room, in the library, and then challenge yourself to talk to someone you've not yet met. Let's build community together. I want to highlight a couple of the announcements which you can also find printed in your order of service. First of all, announcement 3, join Reverend Julie after the service today for a discussion about social justice work at UUCW. There will be a potluck, but even if you didn't bring anything, I'm certain there will be enough food for everyone. And even if you don't want to stay for the conversation, stay for some food. Announcement 4 details opportunities to join the Solstice Singers for next Sunday's service. Note that there's only one rehearsal this Tuesday evening at 6. You don't need to know how to read music to join. And finally, announcement 8, If you're interested in learning more about Unitarian Universalism, there's a two-part orientation starting this coming Saturday morning at 9:30. Use the link shown to register. It really is a privilege to have this once-a-week opportunity to explore and create meaning in the company of others. May this morning's service guide us on the path of truth and love.
Good morning. My name is Eddie Daniel, and my pronouns are he and him. As a member of the worship ministry team, it is my privilege to be leading today's service. I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker, the Reverend Shokan Muishitzu Roshi. He also goes by his pre-ordination name, Erich Moraine. He is a community minister ordained by the UU Society for Community Ministries, attached to Lake Country Unitarian Universalist congregation, and a Zen priest in the Rinzai tradition. Married to Tracy since 1984, they have had the privilege of living with 3 beautiful daughters in the farmhouse that Tracy grew up in just outside of Sussex. On Monday nights, you can find him chopping wood and carrying water for the Kintsugi Singa, which meets at Lake Country UU congregation in Heartland. Some of you may remember them. Erich and Tracy are also former members of UUCW. And now, please stand in body or in spirit as we sing hymn number 354 in the gray hymnal, We Laugh, We Cry.
Thank you.
Universalists get together to worship, we light a chalice. If you are joining us from home, I invite you to kindle a flame of your own. Please join together in saying the words written by Linda Barnes, printed in your order of service. Suspended between all that was and all that might be, we struggle to find this very moment, to live this very moment, to let us sit together for a moment and savor this moment. Let us relish this time, past, me, future. Let us harbor a faith that reminds us that right now, right here, is enough.
Good morning. I'm Dave Cicero, Director of Lifespan Religious Education here at UUCW. And for our Time for All Ages, there's going to be some call and response, some interaction. So if there's any young people or young at heart who would like to come a little closer to make that connection a little smaller, there's some cushions and a blanket right down in front of us.
Please help. We're going to need some help.
And I'll turn it over to Erich.
Yeah. But don't worry, grown-ups, there's a part in this for you as well. So let's start on the guitar. Why can't a bird eat an elephant? Why, oh why, oh why? 'Cause an elephant's got a pretty hard skin. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. So when my kids were young, I remember conversations like that, especially when it was bedtime and we were snuggling and they were trying to avoid having to go to sleep and have me say goodnight and leave the room. And the questions were endless and endless. So with Woody Guthrie's permission, he's the one that wrote this song, I added a few more lyrics. And instead of saying goodbye, 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 I used to sing this as good night, good night, good night. So parents, you're going to have to help me with the good night part, and I'll give you your cue. And kids, you're going to have to help me with the why, oh why. Have you ever asked questions like that? But why? But why? Yeah, so I'm going to need your help. Yes, exactly, just like that. All right, so we'll wait for it till it comes round on the guitar. Why can't a mouse eat a school bus? Why, oh why, oh why? 'Cause a mouse's stomach could never hold a school bus. Good night, good night, good night. Why does a cow drink water? Why, oh why, oh why? Because a cow gets thirsty like you or me. Good night, good night, good night. Why can't a rabbit chase an eagle? Why, oh why, oh why? 'Cause the last rabbit that chased after an eagle didn't come out so good, and that's why rabbits don't chase after eagles, and that's all I know about rabbits and eagles. Good night, good night, good night. Why can't the wind blow backwards? Why, oh why, oh why? 'Cause it might backfire and hurt somebody, and if it hurts somebody, it keep on hurting them, so that shouldn't be doing that anymore. Good night, good night, good night. Why does he wear that funny black dress? Why, oh why, oh why? Because Zen priests get fancy robes to wear for church. Good night, good night, good night. Is it true he's enlightened? Why, oh why, oh why? Oh my goodness, no, he's a goofball like the rest of us. Good night, good night, good night. Why does he sometimes wear a bib? Why, oh why, oh why? 'Cause it's got his name and his teacher's name on the back, so if he gets lost at the mall, they'll know who to page so his parents can come and find him and take him home again. Good night, good night, good night. What does he wear underneath that robe? Why, oh why, oh why? He's got underwear on just like the rest of us do. Good night, good night, good night. Why does he wear white socks and not shoes? Why, oh why, oh why? 'Cause there is indoor shoes so the house stays clean. Good night, good night, good night. Why, oh why, oh why, oh, and why, and why, and why? Because, 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 because. Good night, good night, good night. Thank you.
So much. Rory has agreed to light our RE lantern this morning, so I'll invite him up to do that. And our middle school coming of age class, those students are going to remain in the service today. And I'm going to ask them during offertory, when the baskets are passed by the ushers, to then slip out and meet me in the lobby. We're going to check in on their experience here today. I've already told most of them, I think, on their way in about this, so just a reminder. And I now invite the rest of us to sing our children's recessional. As you go, may joy surround you. As you go, go in peace. Know our love is with you always. As you go, as you go, as you go, may joy surround you. As you go.
You always, as you go, as you go. This winter, in order to expand upon the meanings ingrained in our new mission statement, you are all invited to share a letter to the future of UUCW. A letter or a few words that express how you hope our efforts and dreams today will impact those who follow us. Any of you can share your thoughts this way, either by speaking on a Sunday or by writing something to share in the e-news. Just let Reverend Julie know if you'd like to do that. Today, Susan Foley is going to share her letter to the future.
Good morning. I have written a letter to the future to a couple who is thinking about joining this church in the year 2030. In my letter, I will be addressing the mission statement, a bit about my journey, ways to be a part of this church, and my vision for the future. First, the mission statement. I was a therapist at several agencies, and I've been in several churches. And at many places, the mission statement was simply plastered all over the walls. No one really knew the words. No one ever really read them. Or they were in ornate frames, but they were really not acted out or talked about. It's very, very different here. Our mission statement is simple, but it's deep. It states that we are grounded in love. Joy comes from a sense of belonging. Spiritual growth is our foundation. We are inclusive, and we are committed to justice. All of these values are very important to me, and they're the reason I am here. But the most important is a sense of belonging. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey to explain why that is most important. I walked out of the Catholic Church in 1989. I never entered another church until 2017, on a cold, March, windy day when I walked in here. And what I heard from the pulpit was so freeing and so enriching that I just stayed. Also, I felt the warmth of the congregation. At this time, my husband was at the Lutheran home. We had a wonderful sense of belonging there. We were friends with all the residents, the aides, the staff, and the other caregivers. They were a very sacred 3 years for us. And when he died in 2019, I was devastated. But I had this church to come to. I immediately joined Soul Circle, which was absolutely wonderful. I was supported. I felt loved. It was a wonderful group of people. We talked about good things, and I was able to in many ways, process my grief. I share this with this couple because I think this is how we see the mission statement lived out. Ways to belong. There are so many groups here and so many different things to join. I'm just going to name a few, and I'm sorry for those things that I'm leaving out. But I would encourage this couple to join small groups and activities because they embody the mission statement. We are grounded in love. You will experience this just when you walk in the front door. Joy comes from a sense of belonging. 2 examples of this are the Women's Writing Circle, the Men's Breakfast Group. There's dinners in the home, and I know there's a class going on now called From Aging to Saging, which I hear is excellent. As far as spiritual growth, there's Soul Circle and Wellspring. We are inclusive. You belong here, whomever you love. We are committed to justice. There is Micah for Waukesha County. There's Sophia for Waukesha County and Micah for Milwaukee. And there are many, many activities here for equality and to fight white supremacy. There are many, many things to do for social justice. Another word about spiritual growth as our foundation. The service here on Sunday is profound and enriching. The questions that are asked are deep. They often stay with me for a week or for more. There are no answers, and I find that very refreshing. Last, my vision for the future contains nothing miraculous. That is already here. You must live the mission statement. You must embody it. You must cherish it. That is the only way it will enrich you. In closing, on any given Sunday, if I am a greeter or not, if I'm at the welcome table or not, if I'm having coffee, which I don't make, but I drink it, and if I experience the depth of the service, I leave here with a joyful feeling of belonging. And I think you will also. Thank you.
So for this morning's meditation, I want to give you a little instruction. I come from a Zen tradition that uses koans, questions to kind of challenge you and change you as a person. So I'm going to invite you to participate in a little koan practice with me this morning. This is the no-no koan. And it's not N-O-N-O. The first no is K-N-O-W, as I know this. And the second no is no. No more pat answers. No more pre-stated solutions, right? The first one is no. What is this? What is really here? What is waiting to be known and understood? And you think that no on the inhale. So no. What am I taking in? What is fresh and new here? And on the exhale, no to the pat answers. No to the traditional way of making sense of it. Inhale, I want to see it newly and freshly born. No, not the old way, not the old definition. Okay? and breathe in and out at your own rate, whatever that is. And I'll lead us and I'll bring us out with, I'll start and end us with the bell. No. No. Thank you.
The reading today is an excerpt from a conversation with Dan Harris. A few years ago, I was at a party and talking to a friend, and then they asked me, at that point, I looked across the room, and there was my meditation teacher, Joseph Goldstein, who is this really eminent Buddhist teacher. And he looks at me and he says, "You don't know bleep." Starts laughing hysterically, and I start laughing hysterically. It's really funny. and it's also really useful. We live in the midst of what my friend and writer Maria Popova has called a pandemic of certainty. Everyone is so convinced that the way they see the world is the correct way. And of course, we're not really talking with each other. It's like the Tower of Babel. And it's not good for us, and it's really not good for the people around us. The Buddha actually once said that those who cling to their views and opinions travel the world annoying people. That Buddha was kind of funny, huh? And I know that it makes me annoying, and it also makes me unhappy. Some of the biggest mistakes I've ever made are when I'm totally convinced I'm right, and I'm not listening to anyone else's opinion. So, the next time you're in a situation where you're absolutely convinced that you are 1,000% correct, maybe remember that you really don't know bleep. So Dan Harris, former ABC News anchor, author of 10% Happier, and Buddhist practitioner, now suggests using the phrase the Buddha offered. For when the Buddha was asked about accepting his teachings on face value, he responded, "Ehi posiko," which in his native language of Pali means, "Come and see for yourself."
Good morning. Thank you for coming out this morning on such a brisk, fresh, cold morning. Just for giggles, I checked, and we'd be better off if we were in Anchorage this morning, where it's a balmy 7 degrees. At my house, it was 0. So it's a real privilege to be standing here before you, and thanks for the invitation. And as Eddie mentioned, my wife and I used to be members here before we migrated west and became part of Lake Country. So it's lovely to be back in what I kind of consider my home here. So my name, as I was introduced, my name is Erich Moraine, but I also have another name, Shokan Muishitzu Roshi. You might ask, well, but which one is your real name? And I would say both. I'm also a Unitarian Universalist as well as a Buddhist. I'm affiliated with two traditions, the UU tradition and the Buddhist tradition. I feel at home standing on the doorsill where these two worlds touch. And from this place, I look in both directions and I see nothing but questions as far as the eye can see. How curious, these two traditions, born on different continents, raised in different centuries, are in some ways so similar, like twin sons of separate mothers. Move this up a little higher here. So neither UU or Zen professes to offer salvation, and neither claims to have the answer. And both hold the question in high regard and openly suggest that absolute answers are sometimes quite elusive or maybe not even possible. We laugh, we cry, we live, we die. Both traditions hold asking the question in tender hands. In Unitarian Universalism, this willingness to question is presented as the fourth principle, right? A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. In Zen, it's a single Japanese word, soshin, beginner's mind. So during my 30-plus year history with these two traditions, I've noticed a lot of similarity between Zen, the Japanese variant of Buddhism, and it's actually more of a philosophy than a devotional religious practice, and Unitarian Universalism, which also happens to be not really a devotional practice. And if you listen to my mother, it's not really a real religion either. So I'm not the only one with a foot in both worlds. Did you know that there is a group recognized by the UUA and dedicated to those who are comfortable standing on this doorsill between the two worlds, the Unitarian Universalist Buddhist Fellowship. So if you're intrigued by the possibility of being a part of both at the same time, you might check them out at uubf.org. One of the beliefs held by both UUs and Zen is knowing that the question is as important as the answer. To be asking questions, to ask why, is essential for both traditions. However, the consequences of asking the question are a little different. So, it's a little oversimplification, but to say that in UU and Western thinking, you could say that the question leads to changes in the society. And in Zen or Eastern thinking, asking the question leads to changes in the one who's asking. This morning, I'm going to get curious about curiosity by comparing the fourth UU principle and Zen beginner's mind. So you've probably heard that old joke, how do you know if a Unitarian Universalist lives in your neighborhood? Well, the KKK will burn a large white question mark on their front lawn. Right? And when a student asks and studies with a Zen teacher and says they've got the answer to one of those Zen koan questions, the teacher might typically respond with, very good, but your insight is not yet deep enough. Sit some more. Back to the meditation hall. So let's begin this exploration of curiosity and questioning with Unitarian Universalism. As UUs, we embrace the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And this form of searching for an answer is often a little different than many of us follow when we're at home looking for an answer. So often that searching, that researching ends up being, I Googled it, and I read the first 2 or 3 results, and then I called it good enough, and I wrote that email saying, I did some research, and now I know. Right? And in so doing, I may have skipped over that responsible part of the search for truth and meaning. For many of us, internet searches are often an exercise in confirmation bias. I find results that validate what I already suspect to be true. Some of this confirmation bias is actually kind of behind-the-scenes filtering, which search engines like Google happily do for us. They enclose us in an information bubble, filtering through millions of search results, sorting them with an algorithm that kicks back the top results based on what it thinks I'm looking for, what Google thinks I would like to hear. This filtering is driven by my browsing and search history, and is not an accurate representation of the information out there. If you question whether you're in an information bubble, do a search on your laptop at home or on your phone, and then repeat the same search at the library or a public computer. You will be amazed at how different the search results are. So if I don't recognize that I'm trapped inside one of these information bubbles, I might start looking for something like, why did the Egyptians build those pyramids? And I will learn that, they are actually free energy generators used to power flying saucers for the Lemurians who live in caves under California's Mount Shasta. Oh, but wait, there's more. There's more. The Lemurians have replaced most of the world's leaders with disguised reptilian doppelgangers in pursuit of conquering our planet. And I'm so glad I did this research because it turns out we're very close to being taken over by aliens who want to use us as batteries to power their civilization. The time to rise up and take up arms against government is now before it's too late. Buy bread, buy batteries, buy bullets. The end is very near. While you folks this morning may be too savvy to fall for shoddy research like that, the fact that these things are published and repeated over and over in conversation amplifies their impact on our collective awareness of a subject. It also shows our declining ability as a society to do a free and responsible search for the truth. Because, what about those UFO sightings? Even the Navy now admits that their pilots have seen stuff that they can't explain. And how did the Egyptians cut and stack all those stone blocks? Microscopic precision. And they did it all without Milwaukee Electric power tools. That's just not possible. Scully and Mulder claim the truth is out there. So I think I need to visit a few more websites, do some more research. Maybe I'll sign up for that free energy pyramid power newsletter, which ironically is not free. And then I'll know the truth. These bubbles can have big impacts and sometimes deadly consequence, as we learned a few years ago when some people, having done their research, rejected COVID vaccines as being unsafe, but they were willing to inject themselves with hydroxychloroquine. As we head into the election season, keep this in mind, that we are all sort of stuck inside these information bubbles. So the free and responsible search for truth. In the words of Martin Luther King Jr., this means to become a cognizant citizen, become knowledgeable, to strive to be aware of facts in a scientific as well as philosophical way, to be willing to submit your ideas to scrutiny, to embrace challenges to your belief, to look for ways with which to empirically test your hypothesis. I'm still grateful to my high school chemistry teacher, Mr. Bernie Hosmer. He taught us the scientific method of inquiry, which starts with a premise or question that follows with research into the topic and the generation of a hypothesis, a theory which is then followed up by real-world testing of that hypothesis. And that testing phase leads into careful analysis, and finally, after all that, comes a conclusion. And that may or may not confirm the original hypothesis. Sometimes confirmation bias can sneak in subconsciously, and so in medical research, a double-blind study is often used to try and eliminate that unintentional bias on the part of the researchers. This sort of work takes time, and it's not easy to avoid bias. Sometimes it takes great effort to construct the study in such a way that those doing the research avoid influencing the outcome. This is real science. It's hard, it's messy, and that world is also full of question marks. But you know, I still think UFOs are real. I don't really care what your stupid science expert says. I know they exist. End of conversation. Don't try to convince me with facts. My mind is made up. My dad loved to say that. Have you met someone who's made up their mind in that way? More and more we find ourselves living in this post-truth reality. That search for truth has become disconnected from the free and responsible part of that fourth principle. And that makes the results of the search less meaningful, sometimes even ridiculous. Without that free and responsible influence guiding me, my research becomes nothing more than shouting into an echo chamber. I see what I want to see, and I hear what I want to hear. And I would offer that the antidote to this post-truth reality is our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Let that begin with you and me in this space here this morning, and in other spaces just like this. And have the courage to allow that free and responsible search follow you wherever you go. So now I want to shift a little bit and look at curiosity and questioning through the lens of Eastern thought and Zen. Because like Unitarian Universalism, Zen does not profess to have the answer. If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Right? This is kind of an obtuse way of saying anybody who professes to know the answer does not, and you shouldn't really be paying attention to them. Another story says that the Buddha was once asked, well, why should I believe what you say? There are other teachers out there teaching things that disagree with what you're telling us. So who's right? He replied with something like, don't take my word for it. Try it yourself. Find out for yourself. If it fits for you, use it. And if it doesn't, keep looking. D.T. Suzuki, the author of the classic introductory book on Zen called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, says that to look through awakened eyes at the real form of this universe, to cultivate beginner's mind, that's all you need. Seeing something for the first time, with no context, no previous history, no preconceptions, no story to shape your experience. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. How would you prepare that vegetable if you've never seen it before? How would you present that poem if you've never heard the author read it? How would you get to the top of the mountain without a guide map or a trail? The real trick is to learn to see something over and over and over again and still be able to say, how curious, I wonder why. This freshness of mind is beginner's mind. To remain curious about conditions and circumstances, to be able to say, so what's happening here? This state of not knowing is a state to be cultivated and gladly embraced, not something to be overcome. If you've ever traveled somewhere you need a passport to get to, has anybody ever? Yeah. You've most likely had that beginner's mind experience. The sounds in the street are not familiar. The colors of things are a little different. The way the air smells isn't the same. The buildings, the trees, even the birds are different. It's all different from what you're used to, from what I'm used to living with. It's a little unusual, a little fascinating. And if you think about it carefully, that newness creates just a little bit of uncertainty. And how you engage that uncertainty reaction to the unknown, that determines how tiring your trip will be. All that newness generates some level of anxiety, a little bit of fear of the unknown. And that is the downside to being curious, which is why humans are biologically wired to fear the unknown. It's kind of in our nature. Our biology generates a heightened state of alertness when we face the unknown. Worst case scenario, the unknown results in injury and death. Let's go all the way to the end. Right? This willingness to be afraid of what we don't know is part of the reason why we as a species have been so successful. If what we experience doesn't fit into a pre-existing pattern recognized as safe, we go on alert. The fight or flight response is activated. Adrenaline, endorphin, cortisol, everything spikes and we're ready for the battle. And if we respond fast enough, we get to have lunch. And if we don't respond fast enough, we become lunch. Over thousands of generations, the ones who were not afraid of the unknown or reacted too slowly were lunch. And the ones who were afraid and who did trigger into fight or flight, they survived to have lunch and to have babies. Interestingly, there is no biological downside to false alarms. It's better to be safe than sorry. And that means, one could say, we've kind of been genetically modified to fear the unknown. So when someone asks why, deep down within us are still the remnants of this old mindset, the concern which motivates us to avoid the unknown for fear of death. Stick to the tried and true, and that fear won't trigger quite as much. Perhaps this is why some folks shy away from the unknown and don't ask questions and don't question authority. It's actually a bit safer. So if you do question, here's an unfortunate example of what might happen. Copernicus, the 15th century astronomer, he spent some time observing the planets and how they moved through the night sky. He became curious and developed this hypothesis, which seemed to explain what he saw about how they were moving. Unfortunately, that hypothesis did not agree with the mainstream religiously driven description of his day, and he got a fair amount of pushback from the authorities. He decided to publish his idea anyway in a book titled On the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres. Does anybody know where I'm going with this? Martin Luther, one of the voices of authority of the day, is quoted as having said, "People gave ear to this upstart astrologer who strove to show that the earth revolves, not the heavens or the firmaments, not the sun and the moon." And he continued on with, "This fool wishes to reverse the entire science of astronomy, while sacred scripture tells us that Joshua commanded the sun to stand still and not the earth." Martin Luther was not alone in his condemnation of Copernicus's heliocentric theory of planetary mechanics. In time, his reaction by the authorities resulted in Copernicus's book being withdrawn from circulation, pending certain corrections. And it seemed that there were 9 sentences which described this theory of a sun-centric solar system. And if by chance these 9 sentences were to be redacted, well, then the book could be approved by the church for publication, and everything would be good again. He did as he was instructed, but somehow the book never made it back into publication. The few remaining copies were sequestered away and available for viewing only by special request, and only then by qualified scholars. It seems his question about what revolves around what proved to be a little bit triggering and frightening. But wait, there's more. 40 years later, another great thinker began his questioning career by enrolling in university. And in time, Galileo changed majors from medicine to astronomy, eventually stumbling across Copernicus's book, which sent him down this rabbit hole of questions, and over time resulted in a conflict between Galileo and the Holy Roman Catholic Church again, just as happened with Copernicus. Only this time, Galileo faced the Holy Roman Inquisition. Neither was willing to back down from their positions, and in the end, Galileo was given a choice: shut up already about the earth moving around the sun, to stop teaching this and stay home, or be put to death. He chose censorship and house imprisonment over death, and lived out what some say were the best years of his life as a questioner of things, imprisoned in his own house by the authorities of his day for asking questions. And the powers that be, you might ask, what happened? Well, they did eventually change their mind 359 years later. In 1992, the Vatican admitted to its error and apologized for silencing one of the greatest questioning minds to have ever lived, for being more curious than they could tolerate. Today, we all accept that the earth revolves around the sun and not the other way, and this is in part due to Galileo's willingness to embrace beginner's mind and look at the world through fresh eyes. So I'd like to suggest that curiosity and the willingness to question is not actually the problem, but rather this biological directive to fear the unknown. That is the challenge. If we are brave enough to look, curiosity shines bright on the path to new ideas. Curiosity and questions about why things are as they are can lead to finding new solutions for old problems. If we want to change, we must do things differently. Maybe even boldly go where no one has gone before. Obviously, from Star Trek, that quote opened each episode of the 1960s TV show and set the stage for Captain Kirk and crew to venture into the unknown. Gene Roddenberry, the writer and producer of Star Trek, asked a lot of questions. He asked, what if, all the time. What if there were these two guys, like both half black and half white, but the one was black on the right side and white on the left, and the other guy, well, opposite, white on the right and black on the left. And let's just say they hated each other for being so different. And let's just say they were immortal and they couldn't die. And what would they do with their hatred for each other? What if you fall in love with someone who doesn't look like you, somebody who's an alien? How would you deal with rejection when they brought you home to meet with the family? What if humans aren't actually the smartest animals in the room? Each episode was a rockin' cowboy space adventure filled with trouble driven by a question the writer posed about what it means to be human. So what I've learned is that the more we know about each other, the less we tend to be frightened of each other. And as we explore the unknown together, our shared curiosity brings us closer. We gradually feel safer with each other. We become a little more interconnected, intertwined, perhaps even interdependent. But that's the seventh principle, which I need to save for another sermon, except to say that Zen and UU are in complete agreement there as well. I would say that by exercising a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, another thread has been added to that interdependent web of life which holds us all. Martin Luther King Jr., whom we recently honored with a national holiday, implored us to be cognizant citizens, to become knowledgeable of something, especially through personal experience. Our UU tradition asks us to engage in the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Among many welcomings, UUs welcome diversity of gender and diversity of color. UUs also welcome diversity of opinion And in the larger structure of the world's religions, this is somewhat unusual. So I'd invite you as a congregation to hold this diversity of opinion in tender hands as you move through this interim minister period in search of what the future holds for this congregation. Diversity of thought and opinion creates strength and resilience. Uniformity of thought and homogeneity of thinking can create a somewhat stiff, inflexible structure which does not respond well to challenges. Curiosity and progress go hand in hand. There can be no progress without curiosity. Unwillingness to question, blind obedience, unquestioning acceptance of what's known leads to a stale, dry, lifeless institution intent on self-preservation, not self-actualization. In the world of Zen, there's a word for it. It's called Zen stink. And that form of practice has taken on a greater importance, when the form of the practice has taken on a greater importance than the reason for the form, the cart is before the horse, and it's not a good situation. True scientific inquiry, a truly free and responsible search for truth eventually leads one to a place where the ultimate answer is, we don't know. At the bottom of any research rabbit hole lies that question waiting to be revealed. We don't know. Actually, no one knows. At shallower levels, there are partial answers which can be very worthwhile, but at the bottom of it all is that universal constant. We don't know. Even something as widely accepted as gravity is still a theory. Right? Not because we can't prove that it works, but because we still can't really explain how it works. We have hypotheses, and some of them make sense at the macro scale, and then they break down at the nano scale, and vice versa. But the search for that grand unified theory, it still eludes us, and the search continues. So I'm going to start to wind this down a little. I'd like to offer that a free and responsible search for truth and meaning leads us to the same place that beginner's mind does. A flexible, curious, inquisitive spirit, unencumbered by preconceptions. The more learned a scientist scholar is, the more inclined they are to be humble and admit that they don't know, and more willing to sit with the question. Having learned to embrace ambiguity and uncertainty leads one to have less of a need to impose their answer and more of a willingness to ask the question. So as you search for the truth, do so in a free and responsible manner. Be a cognizant citizen. Stay fresh in your mind and forever young in your heart. Question those who challenge your beliefs and welcome them. And embrace those with whom you disagree and ask them for help in understanding their point of view. Don't let your flexible point of view stiffen into an intractable position. Keep asking questions like a beginner would, because both UUs and Buddhists know to question truly is an answer. Thank you.
Oh, somebody took my script. Does somebody have the script for the? Because I'm told I have to follow the script. Is it in somebody's plan, schedule for the day? Yeah. So, good morning, everybody. I'm Barbara Farr, and I'm a member of Sophia, as you all are, because UUCW is a member of Sophia. UUW Church West Split the Plate program is one of outreach and generosity. Each month, we give half of all undesignated offerings to a nonprofit organization to help us live as our Unitarian Universalist values and serve our community. Our Split the Plate partner for January is Sophia. stewards of prophetic, hopeful, intentional action. I've been a member of Sophia for quite a while. I was a task force leader for transportation. I was on the board. I was the organizer for a while. And I find it as the way to best live out the call to justice in our faith lives. And the other thing with being part of Sophia and Micah and all these kinds of organizations which are related is that the best people are people who work for social justice. So part of Sophia's fundraising plan is that they have an annual prayer breakfast. And a couple years ago, we thought we would invite Father Brian Massingale, who's a very well-known and well-respected Catholic ethicist, social ethicist. And he has a very heavy schedule. He's always out preaching or talking or giving presentations. And we thought it would be a long shot to get him. But his response to us was that he would come. He wanted to come because Sophia, the people in Sophia who are working for justice, are really up against a hard job because of the nature of Waukesha County. So he did come, and he lifted up Sophia, and I lift up Sophia. So I hope you'll be generous today. To help support Sophia, go to UUCW's Donate tab and select Split the Plate from the menu, or text or mail your donation today using the information found here, or use this envelope. And thank you for your generosity to Sophia and your commitments to social justice. We will now gratefully receive your offering.
And now, if you would please stand in body or in spirit and sing hymn number 1003 from the Teal Home Hymnal, Where Do We Come From?
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going?
Are adapted from the Fox Valley UU Fellowship. As we extinguish this flame, let us go separate ways, knowing not the answers to all things, but seeking always the answer to one more thing than we know now. Let us be searchers and adventurers in ways untrod, holding the hope of discovery high within us, sharing that hope and whatever discovery may come with others. Go in peace.